So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I run the Cleantech 21 Foundation in Zurich for the last 10 years. It's a not-for-profit foundation. We are the initiators and organizers of the Hack for Climate Innovation Program. And as one of the use cases and challenges we have in Hack for Climate, it's the Selber Energy Venture. And I was asked to focus on energy today, so that's what I'm going to do. Maybe first to the question about whether we need game changers, what are the game changers, and why are we taking this Hack for Climate approach. It's actually very simple. Exponential climate action is what we need, and we need innovation that is exponential too in order to reach that climate action. You see on the left the very simple and summarized chart of the IPCC's SR15 report, and it shows very clearly that we have a dramatic change ahead of us. In 30 years from now, with emissions still going up, that was the bad news we saw from many reports, we need to reach net zero, and that's a monumental task. And our argument is that for this monumental task, we need this exponential innovation, and we find a lot of the technologies that we need for that in the fourth industrial revolution. You recall the first one is when we discovered the steam engine, then we went with a second one into mass production. The third one is the computer IT revolution, and now we're in the fourth industrial revolution, often called cyber physical systems, that has a lot to do with machine-to-machine type systems and with systems innovation in general. If we dig a little bit deeper into the fourth industrial revolution, and I encourage you to look, for example, at the World Economic Forum. If you Google fourth industrial revolution and World Economic Forum, you get to this interactive chart. You see very many fields that are covered by this fourth industrial revolution. The blue ones are the innovation and sustainable development ones, so it clearly has an effect there. And the three key ones we're focusing on is the Internet of Things, IoT, distributed ledger technologies, or blockchain as it's commonly termed, and artificial intelligence, the three together. There are many others, but these three, that's our focus. Why did we choose that focus? Quite simple, because there's another macro driver that we see, and that's the one towards decentralization, and just before it has been mentioned. In energy, it's most obvious. We're transferring from large central power plants, big grids, to decentralized systems that work completely differently, and that will be the focus of my second part. So not only in energy we see it, also in mobility we see decentralization. We have shared ownership, for example, in cars. Joseph mentioned cryptocurrencies. They are decentral currencies, so in many aspects we see decentralization. Now let's focus on this, as we call it, the disruptive troika. On the one hand, IoT, in the middle DLT, and then AI, artificial intelligence. Why is this so powerful? Because we will see an enormous increase in the amount of devices connected to the internet that capture data. That's IoT. We need to capture this data in a distributed way. We don't want to create silos, and we don't want to create centralized structures. We don't want, in simple terms, a Google of IoT, because that would mean even more central type power. And if we have that data captured, we need to administer it decentrally, and then we need to analyze it. And AI offers enormous potential to analyze this data, but again, it should be in a decentral way. Because if there's one organization or one company having all the data and all the benefits from analyzing it, again, we have a decentralization of power issue. And if you analyze the data well, you can feed it back to the IoT devices and start to run intelligent systems, and that's really what this fourth industrial revolution is all about. Very quick, we have run last year for the first time Hack for Climate. We had 100 hackers from 33 countries come together to the Bonn Climate Conference, COP23. We had a hotel boat where they all stayed and hacked for 5 days. We had a real hackathon and competition and jury that has chosen 5 winning cases, and at the end we could go to COP and present the innovation we have done there and then to showcase what can be done with this fourth industrial revolution exponential technology. We've realized that we've been successful, but a hackathon alone would not do it. So the year 2018 we used to build from a hackathon to an innovation program that now has a regular hackathon during the COP climate conferences, but in between also has a challenge preparation phase and a accelerator for the best teams so that we can make sure those ideas that we hack on and develop are really then implemented into the ground, because that's what it's all about. For those of you who are interested, there's a link to the profile, and I shared my presentation on the app so that you could download it if you want. What do we focus on in Hack for Climate? We don't have time to go through the whole list, but it's there to show you that it's not just energy. Energy is category number 1. But we also look at land use, mobility, other areas, because we see that disruptive troika, IoT, DLT, and AI, to have a huge effect on all of those industries. And we see some cross-industry trends. One is remote sensing, with more and more data coming from the sky, and it's also becoming cheaper and cheaper, that influence all these different industries. So that's what we focus on. And now let's focus on the energy use case. It's called CELBR. And it basically means energy bottom up. It means energy through community power. CELBR believes we need to rapidly scale renewable energies. CELBR believes renewable energies are most rapidly scaled in a distributed way. So if you're in India in a not yet electrified area, rather than building a central power plant and then the whole grid, it's much, much faster and more secure to actually build from the ground up different communities with solar panels and batteries. At the end, you reach more electrification quicker, and the price for the energy paid is going to be cheaper in our view. So that's really what CELBR is all about. Why can we say this in this bold type of way? Because we see 4 waves in energy that are all hitting the ground. The PV, distributed power of photovoltaics, we already experienced this huge price decline and increase in efficiency. That's ongoing. Right now, we'll see the same thing in batteries. Batteries are getting cheaper and cheaper because production volumes scale up, and already the combination of batteries and storage, of batteries and PV, is a very, very powerful one. But there's a third wave people don't talk about yet, and that's the integration wave. Very, very soon, we'll see photovoltaic power integrated into rooftops and facades. And that's a little bit like the efficiency argument. If you can build a roof, which you have to build anyway, and then make it photovoltaically active at the same time, you're sort of you have a double whammy, a win-win. So we see that as a huge driver as well. And then fourth is the digital driver, where IoT, DLT, and AI will really enable the whole thing, and I try to show you in the time remaining what this means. I do this with a real-world example. This is a house in Switzerland. It was completed in August 2016, and it's basically all of this applied already except for number 4. It's completely covered in photovoltaic panels. There has a large battery in the cellar, and not just battery, but actually hydrogen that is stored for winter. So the building produces so much power in summer, when there's more sun in Switzerland, that you can produce hydrogen, store it in the cellar, and then burn it in winter, so that actually you're completely energy independent. This is a modern 7-family house in northern Switzerland, and as of middle of 2016, it's 100% energy independent. It has Tesla charging stations in the cellar, and it has an elevator, so it's a modern building, and it works. And now we argue that if you include IoT, DLT, and AI, these digital enablers, you can even go a lot further. One thing to note is that neither economically nor ecologically, these completely independent house, as I had on the previous slide, is the right option. But if you multiply it and the 2 houses would share, then you have an immediate benefit. That's the peer-to-peer thing we spoke before. Because those houses have people living in them that don't have the same demand patterns. So if they share their energy infrastructure, both of them, in this simplified example, will benefit. They'll have, for a lower price, a better quality or autarky of their power system. How does this work? So, with an IoT device, they tell us what their demand and supply is. We analyze this, make predictive analyses, have scheduled consumption where we can levelize and optimize the power between the different participants, and then send it back to those houses where the devices, the heat pump, for example, then takes this information and acts accordingly. Maybe waits a few minutes and still it starts a new cycle while the neighbor is still charging a car, and so on and so forth. I think you get the picture. Very interesting in this is that actually it has a quite disruptive approach. And I'm running a bit out of time, so I can't go into detail, but very simplistically speaking, We believe that the smart meter isn't smart at all, but actually will develop into an energy hub that is not owned as the smart meter is by the utility, but actually is owned by the prosumer. So you have a smart meter that you own, and you decide how your data is shared into the network. It's not a smart meter the utility installs with you and then basically grabs your data and optimizes the data on the utility's behalf. Therefore, we see a rapid change in the smart meter market from being a B2B market into a B2C market, pretty disruptive. This is a pilot we've done, and actually one of the participants sits in the room there, Mika. He was a hacker last year, where we test this system, and very simplistically speaking, you have these different energy hubs and different prosumers cooperating. They do that over a distributed ledger where they share their data on a data marketplace. They access this with smart contracts, and then there's AI and what you call oracles to confirm transactions, and that's how the system works. And for whatever the community can't deal here, there is transactions with others, central power plants or other communities to balance this out. To conclude, I want to share some of the different lessons. So we have a real-world pilot working on this. It's in Wallenstadt, Switzerland, where 30 households are connected. And when we see that, we see on the one thing, it kind of works. But we also see it will work commercially if one starts to price the grid differently. At the moment, no matter if your power comes from here or from across the road, in most countries, you pay the same network fee. In the future, we will have network tariffs that are actually time and location dependent. So it's within the community network that you pay a fee, and if the power comes from further away, you pay more. That makes total economic sense, and when you implement that, the prosumer energy community makes more economic sense, so that's a good thing to happen. So to conclude very quickly, this does not work yet for commercial implementation large scale. We have challenges. Distributed ledgers are not fast enough, for example. And we don't know which transaction should be on-chain, off-chain. There are many questions around. These are actually real figures where we can test that things are not ready yet, for example, within Ethereum. But if we look at the market opportunities, we see on the one side that in developing countries, where there's no utility yet, where there's no network yet, immediately you can start to build energy systems bottom up. Because there's no network and no utility yet, you kind of have to do that. And also in developed markets, we believe this is going to come very, very quickly. So, as a conclusion, the combination between the energy innovation that we know of, PV, batteries, etc., with the digital innovation of the fourth industrial revolution, the climate regulation that will come into place, such as carbon pricing that was mentioned, and the energy regulations, such as the network tariffs I mentioned, that will also happen because governments want people to be renewable energy enabled, will transform the energy from a top-down to a bottom-up market. And this is exactly what we do in Hack for Climate. So if you want to engage, join us here at COP. And in any case, get active, because we need every single one of you to make it happen and be saying action now to implement the Paris Agreement. Thanks a lot.